Hi, my name is Christina, and welcome to Divine Energy in Motion. I would like to talk today about generational patterns and generational trauma. Um, in a lot of the shadow work that I had been doing um, in the beginning of my healing journey, a lot of what I started to notice in analyzing my behaviors and analyzing, where they came from or the motivation behind them, um, I learned that a lot of these were not necessarily mine in the sense that they were either learned behaviors or something innately that I would do that I got from either my parents, which they got from their parents, and so on and so forth. Um, and it's almost like until I'm able to identify it, until I'm able to um, see it as it's happening, and accept that this is something that I do, I'm not able to change it. Okay, so ways in which I've been able to identify these patterns is definitely for me to be present. And being present for me is literally slowing down. In a world where we're expected to go a million miles an hour, to multitask, to get a bunch of things done at the same time, it doesn't foster um, a way of life in which you kind of slow down and really be present and mindful in your everyday life, connecting with whoever you're speaking to, connecting with whatever it is that you're doing, whether or not it's cooking or I don't know, laundry or anything, any kind of like simple task or whatever. It's in when I'm in a space of being mindful, when I'm in a space of being present, I'm able to really slow down and see my um, initial like behaviors or reactions and kind of be able to pivot if it's something that doesn't necessarily serve me. Also, using all of my five senses is another way that I know that I'm really being present, and being in that mindset of being able to really see what you're doing and feel what you're doing. Um, when I'm in that space, when I'm in a very present state of mind, it's almost like things for me slow down, and maybe I'm able to act instead of react. So maybe in a particular set of circumstances where um, an old version of me would have, you know, snapped or not said anything or um, done something, let's say, avoided doing something, wasn't accountable, whatever, I can sit and say, okay, why is there resistance? Or where am I resisting something? Or is this because I'm afraid of the unknown, if you will? And so I would rather stay comfortable doing something that I'm used to doing versus breaking that particular pattern and trying something new. So really being in that present state of mind for me allows me to be able to identify behaviors. And it's almost like being like a quiet observer, just watching myself, like at first, and saying, okay, that's interesting. That when presented with a particular event, this is generally how I react. I wonder why that is, or whatever. And then, like, peeling back the layers of that and really getting an understanding as to why I behave a certain way and where that behavior comes from and what my beliefs are behind that behavior. And then giving myself some grace, because for me, especially more so in the past, before I did a lot of this work, I was constantly beating myself up. It was almost like this desire to be in a state of perfection, but that was unrealistic. And that mental chatter was also like feeding myself toxicity in a sense. So it's like giving your giving myself grace and then accepting that this is a behavior that I have so that I could choose not to do it if confronted with the same type of experience. So, I suppose, for example, uh, something like me sitting and shooting this content. Um, I've always been the type of person that wanted things to be perfect before I would actually go and do them. Like the stars would have to align, and then I would be comfortable and um, essentially move forward into something. But the stars aligning isn't something that's always going to happen or always going to happen for me at a time that I need it to happen. So it was like understanding where my resistance is, even in like recording content, and why it is that I'm resisting it. And then really thinking about the beliefs behind that. Why is it that I want things to be perfect before I want to uh, let go and accomplish something, if you will. Um, it's almost like for me, it's like a some sort of idea of control, right? That I'm going to be able to control a set of circumstances, and if I can control all the outcomes, I could protect myself from any type of hurt or pain or whatever. And so, and of course, where does that come from? I mean, surely my parents and their parents and their parents had whatever um, in their life that they may have wanted to protect themselves against, whatever hardships. And so as a result, that may have like slowed them down in terms of like wanting to, pull the trigger on something. And so that translates to me, you know, being a little apprehensive of like jumping fully into something because I don't know what the outcome is going to be. And so, um, eventually, uh, doing identifying and making a different choice over and over again, I've become comfortable in changing and developing that habit, and now all of a sudden it's easier for me to do something. Maybe not necessarily the creating content part. I'm still working on that, right? But like let's say accountability. Accountability has always been an issue for me, um, and discipline too. Um, and so I've always wanted to maintain a clean space, a clean home, um, and an organized home, no clutter. Um, and for me to do that on a regular basis just felt like it was like pulling teeth, because that I really wanted things to be like super neat, super clean, or whatever. And I, I would say I'm intentional. Some people might say I'm slow, but it takes me a while to clean my place. But I established a routine, a ritual, if you will, every Friday where I say, okay, every Friday I am going to clean my home from top to bottom so that when I go to sleep, my weekend can start without me not having to worry about, oh, is my space clean? And so at first, I mean, it still takes me a long time, but at first I used to dread it. I used to be like, oh my God, I really don't look forward to Fridays because I really don't want to do all of that intense cleaning. But I would be disciplined and I would hold myself accountable. And I'd say, listen, if you don't take yourself seriously, nobody else is going to take you seriously. So you need to start with something simple like keeping your space clean so that you can feel good, so that you can feel um, like clear headed enough to be able to do the things that you want to accomplish on the weekends. And over time, it got a little bit easier to a little bit easier. And now, honestly, I look forward to cleaning my place every Friday because I feel really good when I wake up on Saturday morning and my whole space smells great and and looks great. Um, I had mentioned in an earlier video, I have two small kids, and I'm a single mom during the week. So I have two small boys, 5 and 2, and you, as a parent, if any parents are watching this, they totally understand that kids will take your place and just turn it into a mess. Food on the floor, whatever. And as much as I clean up at night and things like that, there's like a balancing act because you want to sleep, but you also don't want to live in filth. So it's like balancing how much time are you going to allocate to like cleaning at the end of the night, but also be able to sleep and do all the things that you need to do. So really on Fridays when my boys go to their dads, I take the opportunity to say, okay, I have the weekend to myself. Let me clean my space so that on the weekends I can be super productive. And I've been doing that for several months now. And I have to say that I feel so good. I feel so accomplished. I feel so incredibly like clear minded after all of it. And so, and it, I really have to say that with every single behavior that I've changed, that I've identified, that I realize that doesn't necessarily serve me in the way in which it should, when I'm able to push through and persevere, um, I am really grateful at the end of the day because I feel like a different person. I shift into a different person. My boys see the changes and then they realize, oh, this is the behavior that I'm supposed to emulate, if you will. And so, you know, they learn to expect it. I've said before, the whole idea of do as I say, not as I do doesn't really work. And it didn't really work for me as a child, and it definitely isn't going to work for my children. So it's a matter of me living by example and making these changes, because at the end of the day, the buck stops with me. I can't sit and say, oh, like sit in some sort of victimization mode and say, oh, well, because I was taught this, or because I saw this and I learned this behavior, then that like I am helpless and I cannot change the fact that this is how I'm wired. That's not true at all. Everything is a choice for me. As long as I'm able to identify it, as long as I take the time to identify it, then I have the ability to make a choice as to whether or not I choose to continue to live this way or if I choose a different way. And it's really across the board. It doesn't really matter what it is. The gym has always been, I'm either like 100,000% in, or I'm like, I don't want to do it at all. Like I've always been, I've never been a middle ground type of person. And so I've been, incorporating the gym. I was doing a lot of cardio, and I noticed that wasn't entirely helping me, and then I needed to incorporate more lifting, of which I've done in the past. Um, but of course, I wasn't consistent or holding myself accountable. So I would do it for a period of time and then I would just stop. So I have this plan that I'm following that I've done in the past, but I've never actually completed the entire 3-month plan. And one of the plans is, lifting and then eventually folding in cardio after like a month or so or whatever. And so I'm starting week 3 this week. And like I'm really focused on being accountable with myself and saying, okay, like this is part of my lifestyle. This isn't just something that I'm going to do for a little bit and then turn to something else or whatever. So it's like, it's something that I'm doing. I'm going to do it when I'm supposed to be doing it and then move on. Not going to sit and overly think about it. And so doing it at first, I'll be honest, I wasn't too thrilled. But now that it's been a couple of weeks, I'm like, okay, I'm looking forward to going. I'm looking forward to accomplishing the things that I want to accomplish at the gym. And I'm looking forward to seeing the benefits of all of that effort that I put into it. So it's really just about identifying behaviors and then changing realizing that those behaviors don't serve me, and then choosing to change those behaviors, um, and shifting my life in that regard. Um, I would say also respecting myself in terms of breaking generational patterns. There has always been a tendency, at least in the women of my family, where there hasn't necessarily been boundaries or the respect, like almost like over giving. Like, I don't know if you've ever read The Giving Tree. It's a children's book where the tree would essentially give and gave all of its limbs until it was a stump, and then the kid sat on the stump, and it's a really like sad book because at the end of the day, it's almost like the tree was expected to give everything, and that's not really realistic or sustainable for the person who is giving everything. And so it's been me understanding and identifying where I'm overextending. Where am I overextending in my own like energy and my own like me wanting to help out, or me listening to a friend who might want to vent, or me, you know, whatever it is that's over an overextension of myself that leaves me feeling depleted or leaves me feeling imbalance. It's me identifying those when those things occur, and then making the changes and being okay with that, because it's one thing to be selfish and it's another thing to um, put myself first. And I think that for a long time, at least in society, wasn't something that was very applauded. You were applauded for overextending, or you were applauded for giving everything and not keeping anything for yourself. But I mean, we all know that this breeds like disease and illness and imbalanced mental states. And so the best thing that I can do for myself is respect my own boundaries, because if I don't do them, I can't expect other people to respect me as a result. So some of that has been challenging for me, especially since I've always had kind of like a people pleasing type of um, personality, where I love to see people happy, so I'll end up going above and beyond to do that. But I'm really had to pull that back and make sure that I'm okay. Well, I know that maybe it's been overused with people are always like, you need to pour from a full cup. Like, I can't overextend because then I'll have nothing left for myself to keep myself going. So respecting or establishing and respecting my own boundaries so that others could do the same for me. um, Also, I would say protecting my energy and protecting my own peace of mind. So one of the things that I've done recently in the last several months, especially now that I live alone, is staying in my own energy and really just sitting with myself and really just being in my own energy, because it's in being in my own energy and in my own thoughts, these things bubble up and come up. And it's almost like feelings or things that I haven't been addressing will kind of come to the surface. And one of the things that um, came to me like 4 years ago or so during like a retreat was that I need to feel to heal. I kept hearing it over again and over again. You need to feel to heal. You need to feel to heal. And so I have always been one who would numb myself with all sorts of things like TV, internet content, food, whatever. Anything that was not going to, well, that was going to keep me from feeling whatever was bubbling up inside of me. I didn't want to feel it. I didn't want to process it. But at the end of the day, the only way to heal for me, to heal these emotions, is to actually allow them to come up to the surface and allow myself to like feel them so that I could identify, where they're coming from, and what my beliefs are around these emotions so that I could change them and then move past that. And the only way for me to be able to do that is to be alone and not have anybody else's energy um, around me, because a lot of times other people can project things onto me where I start to think that it's my own beliefs when in reality it's someone else's projection, and it's not intentional. Some people, they do it unintentionally, but the only way to be able to truly identify what is mine is literally to be alone for an extended period of time, however long I can. Usually, and if I need to go into hermit mode or like monk mode, I will go the whole weekend not talking to an entire person. And it is could be tremendously hard for me to do because of course, like, I want to socialize, I want to catch up with friends, I want to connect with other people, but it's really in sitting with myself I have the ability to understand what my feelings are, what my behavioral patterns are, what kind of serves me, what doesn't serve me. And so sitting with myself, I would say, also gives me the opportunity, once I'm in that state of like homeostasis, once I'm in that state of like balance, then I can kind of say, okay, this is my energy and this is where I need to stay. And when I go out into the world, if I'm feeling any way outside of that, I know that it's either a projection, I know that it's either, I'm in an imbalanced way, so I need to do something to kind of offset that. So it's this ability to be super familiar with my own energy, super familiar with where I am when I'm in a state of balance, allows me to kind of adjust when I'm out and about during the week so that I can stay pretty level and consistent and not be like emotionally erratic or whatever, if you will, right? So, protecting my energy, protecting my peace of mind, I would say, in terms of news consumption, I have not listened to the news since 2020. I think like when the whole thing with the pandemic, and I think ultimately when the whole thing with George Floyd happened, I lost it. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot. I felt so emotionally connected to everything, and it broke me. And I realized at that moment that I literally needed to take a step back and just stay in my own energy and work on myself, because there is no way that I could help anybody if I'm not in a healthy state of mind. There's no way. It's just not possible for me. So I stopped consuming any type of news. And I think at that point, I realized how much that was affecting me on a regular basis. It was almost like I was plugging in and allowing the news to just emotionally bring me down, more down than up, just because things have been crazy. But it's just like, it would just dictate my emotions. And I was like, you know what, this isn't for me. If there's something that I need to know that is catastrophic that's going to go on, surely I'm going to find out at some point, or they'll push a notification on my phone or something. I don't know. So for me, it's like I am very um, I am very specific as to what I'm consuming energetically. And that means news, it means people, it means really anything, because I know that I will be affected if it's something that's not in alignment with me. Um, so I would also say, too, being by myself and protecting my energy has made it much easier for me to emotionally regulate. Because, in terms of generational patterns, I would say that emotional regulation or lack of emotional regulation is something that probably dated back way beyond my parents and their parents and so on and so forth. And as I had mentioned before in a previous video, I was in therapy for like 20 years, different therapists, different psychiatrists, and what have you. I would say that I was a professional patient. And sometimes I would say, I wish I could just take my file of my medical records or whatever and just give them to the doctor and say, please read this so that I don't have to talk about the same thing again, so that we can get to a point where I can actually where I can actually like have some sort of growth or something, right? And so I would say that I don't believe I learned anything about emotional regulation through all of the years of therapy that I did. I'll be honest. And if I did, it was something that was more of a band aid. It was more like symptomatic. I wouldn't say it was something that was really at the crux of change in terms of like emotional behavior. I would say for sure my shadow work and inner child work and really analyzing my behaviors and my beliefs um, was the only way for me to shift. And of course, like affirmations, of which I will go through in another video. But I would say in that emotional regulation is so important, especially as a parent, because it's like as parents or as a parent, I had this expectation where I'm like, my small child, why are they crying, or why are they getting upset, or why I don't understand for whatever reason that seems so minute. Why are you throwing a fit? But at the end of the day, I'm here, as a woman in my 40s. and, and if I can't emotionally regulate, like, how do I expect a 5-year-old to? And if I'm not giving them an example of what emotional regulation looks like, how can I expect my child to be able to do the same? So it's like having to sit and say, okay, um, where do I need, or what do I need to do to be able to regulate my emotions, and where is this coming from? Is really, for me, was important, because I would say, even though sure I have my moments, I have my days, who doesn't? I'm living the human experience, right? But like for the most part, I can say that I don't get upset so easily, or like at the flip of a switch, where I used to just, maybe I wouldn't necessarily like explode to somebody, although I did a lot in the past. But I could physiologically just feel it like bubbling up, and I'd just be like, oh my God, I'm literally going to throw something. And so I would say now that I don't really have those moments where I feel like I'm going to lose my mind. And I would say it's as a result of really identifying my behaviors and learning how to emotionally regulate my emotions, rather. Another generational pattern I would say that I have been able to really work on, I have my moments, of course, but is seeking validation outside of myself, because I would always want people to like me, always, and everybody and anybody. And it didn't really matter. It could be the cashier at the Target, or it could be family, it could be friends, it could be any anybody. I just was always seeking that validation outside of myself. And it wasn't until I really had to work on where that was coming from, um, and being like in my own power, and understanding that uh, I am enough as I am, and that I don't need to worry about the opinions of other people. That really shifted the way in which the lens in which I view the world now, because it's almost like before I was always performing, if you will, because I wanted people to like me. And now, I mean, for the first time in a very long time, I have so much love and gratitude and appreciation for myself that I could really care less if anybody likes me. And I used to say that, but I wouldn't like really feel it, or how people say understand it, right? Like, but now I don't care. And it's a very liberating and it's a very free place to be because it allows me to like pursue things that I would ordinarily have never wanted to pursue. Things that I would be like, oh, well, what if people say this? Or, you know, what if people think that of me? And who cares? So what? So they do, so they don't. I keep hearing like more and more across content or whatever this idea of like being authentic and being my true self, because in being my true self, I'm going to attract my tribe, whoever that is. And so the people that don't really resonate with me, that's great, because then that's just going to push me further towards the people that do resonate with me. And those people are going to be my tribe of people, if you will, right? So giving my power away was a pattern in which was definitely generational. Um, it's like I need to be able to, for me to understand how powerful I am. I would say that that all connects back to sitting in my own energy, right? Sitting in my own energy, understanding who I am authentically, understanding who I am like in that space that's truly me, and understanding that I create my own reality. So um, I can't expect other people to do things for me or show up for me in a way that I'm not going to show up for myself. Like it's me first and foremost. So for me, I would say at the end of the day, um, if I allow people to dictate what my reality is going to be as to what I can and cannot do, I'm essentially giving my power away. I'm allowing other people to dictate my life. And I did that for a very long time. I did that, in my job. I did that among friends. I mean, I think that's tied to validation for me in some ways. But really, I think my predecessors, my ancestors, felt very powerless in some cases, and I feel like, I mean, in many cases, that made a lot of sense because, my family is from the Dominican Republic, and we're a mix of so many things. We have African ancestry, we have European ancestry. I mean, specifically African ancestry and slavery. I mean, that there alone, their power was taken away completely. And that was not that long ago. So, this idea that even though I'm free, that I'm not in my head, right? Like those are all self imposed limitations. And I didn't realize that I had so many self imposed limitations because that's just how I grew up. But now I'm understanding that I can really do anything that I want to do, as long as I'm in alignment energetically, as long as, it's something that I work towards. Yeah, so I invite you to ask yourself about your own patterns, um, whether or not you might feel that some of them might be generational patterns or generational behaviors that were passed down to you. Um, feel free to comment, below, and share like what your experiences are, or maybe you already have like a way in which you identify your patterns, and you have some sort of additional suggestions that um, might be fruitful in terms of helping, helping breaking these patterns, identifying these patterns. I love the idea of creating community. I hope that my comment section could establish some sort of a community that allows people to share, because at the end of the day, we are all one unity consciousness living in this human experience. So why not, help each other out? I honestly think in this world today, the work within self is what expands out to help other people. um, being a living example gives other people the opportunity or the option to know that, to let people know that there is another option of living. There is another way to be. There are ways to change. We don't have to live in this continuous loop. You know, what do they say? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I mean, at this point, life is short. And so why not change what you can today, or at least start? So that is what I'm attempting to do. And I invite anyone who is interested to do the same. Let's share. Thank you for listening. And if you liked my content, please feel free to like and subscribe and share your comments below. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time.